The Defiant slipped through the asteroid field like a shadow. Rocks the size of mountains floated all around them. Some were as big as cities. Ji-won watched the navigation screens carefully. One wrong move and they would crash. But the asteroids also hid them from enemy sensors. On the main view screen she could see the Valthari fleet. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrible way. They gleamed like black glass. Their weapons glowed with purple energy. They moved with absolute confidence, as if nothing in the universe could challenge them. High Marshal Theron commanded that fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was the greatest military leader the Valthari had ever produced. In 40 years of service, he had conquered 18 worlds personally. He had never retreated. He had never lost. Ji-won opened a communication channel. She broadcast on all frequencies, making sure every Valthari ship would hear her words. Valthari Fleet. This is Commander Ji-won Kim of the Human Defense Ship Defiant. You are attacking civilian colonies. Leave this system immediately or face the consequences. For a long moment there was only silence. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was deep and cold, full of contempt. I am High Marshal Theron. Your species is primitive and weak. You send one small ship to threaten 47 vessels of the Dominion? This is either courage or stupidity. I have not decided which. Perhaps you will learn the difference, Ji-won replied calmly. Leave now or we will teach you. Theron laughed. The sound echoed across the communication channel. Very well, human. I will send 12 ships to destroy you. When you are dead, we will finish our work here. Your defiance will be forgotten in a day. The communication ended. On the tactical display, Ji-won watched 12 Valthari cruisers break away from the main fleet. They began moving toward the asteroid field, searching for the Defiant. Hyun checked his weapon systems. All missiles ready, Commander. Railguns charged. We can fire whenever you give the order. Dr. Choi studied the enemy formation on her screen. Commander, look at how they move. They stay in tight formation. They follow their lead ship exactly. If we destroy the lead ship, the others will be confused for a few seconds. Ji-won nodded. She had noticed the same thing. The Valthari were organized, disciplined, powerful. But they were also predictable. They followed rules. They did what their commanders told them. They never thought for themselves. Humans were different. Humans adapted. Humans improvised. Humans survived. Wait until they enter the densest part of the asteroid field, Ji-won said. Then we hit them hard and fast. The Valthari ships moved closer. They were hunting, using powerful sensors to scan every asteroid. They knew the Defiant was hiding somewhere. They just needed to find it. The lead cruiser passed within 2 kilometers of the Defiant's position. Ji-won held her breath. Everyone on the bridge was completely silent. Now, Ji-won said. The Defiant burst from behind a massive asteroid. All its weapons fired at once. Missiles streaked through space. Railgun rounds moved at incredible speed. The Valthari lead ship never had a chance to react. Explosions tore through its hull. The ship broke apart in a ball of fire. The other Valthari ships stopped moving. Just as Dr. Choi predicted, they seemed confused without their leader. For 3 precious seconds they did nothing. Those 3 seconds were enough. The Defiant fired again. 2 more Valthari cruisers exploded. Then the Defiant dove behind another asteroid, disappearing from enemy sensors once more. The remaining 9 Valthari ships finally reacted. They spread out and began firing wildly at asteroids, trying to hit the hidden human ship. Rocks exploded all around the Defiant. Ji-won ordered evasive maneuvers. The ship twisted and turned through the deadly field. We took down 3 of their ships, Hyun said. His voice shook with excitement. 3 ships in less than a minute. Do not celebrate yet, Ji-won warned. They know we are here now. They will not make the same mistake twice. On the colony below, Captain Daehyun Shin watched the battle from his command center. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. 1 human ship was actually fighting the Valthari. 1 ship was making the unstoppable empire bleed. He opened a communication channel to all the colonists. Listen to me. The Defiant is buying us time. We need to evacuate. Get to the transport ships. Get to the underground shelters. Move now. People began running through the streets. Parents carried children. Old people helped each other walk. Transport ships lifted off from the colony's landing pads. They headed for the outer system, trying to escape before the Valthari destroyed everything. Meanwhile, aboard the Eternal Dominion, High Marshal Theron stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 3 ships destroyed by one small human vessel. This was impossible. This was unacceptable. Send 20 more ships, Theron ordered. Destroy that human vessel. I want its commander brought to me alive. The battle continued for hours. The Defiant struck from the shadows, destroyed enemy ships, then vanished again. The Valthari grew more frustrated with each attack. They were supposed to be the hunters. Instead, they felt like prey. But the Defiant was taking damage too. Valthari weapons found their mark. Hull breaches appeared. Systems began failing. The ship shook with each hit. Engineer Boram Lee worked frantically in the engine room. She redirected power from damaged systems. She sealed hull breaches with emergency patches. She kept the ship alive through skill and determination. Commander, we cannot take much more of this, she reported over the communication system. The power core is at 60%. Life support is failing on decks 3 and 4. How long can you keep us flying? Jiwan asked. Maybe 6 more hours, Boram said. Maybe less. Jiwan looked at the chronometer. They had been fighting for 37 hours without rest. Her crew was exhausted. Her ship was dying. But on the colony below, thousands of people were escaping. Captain Shin's transports were reaching safety. 6 hours, Jiwan said. Then we will make them count. The Defiant emerged from the asteroids again. This time it headed straight for a Valthari command ship. The enemy vessel was larger and stronger. But Jiwan had learned their weakness. She aimed for their communication arrays. Without communications, Valthari ships became isolated and confused. The attack worked. The command ship's communication tower exploded. Suddenly, a dozen Valthari vessels lost contact with their fleet. They stopped coordinating. They became easy targets. High Marshal Theron watched his organized fleet fall into chaos. He could not understand how one ship was causing so much destruction. These humans did not fight with honor. They did not fight with strength. They fought with tricks and deception, but tricks were working. 43 hours into the battle, the Defiant's power core finally began to fail. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Red emergency lights flashed on every deck. Commander, we have lost main power, Boram's voice came through. The core is melting down. We have maybe 10 minutes before total failure. Jiwan made a decision. She plotted a collision course with the Valthari flagship. If they were going to die, they would take Theron with them. But then Hyun shouted from his station, Commander, wait! I am detecting something on long-range sensors. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They are transmitting human identification codes. Jiwan stared at the screen. 23 warships appeared on the display. The human fleet had arrived. They were early. They were here, they were not alone anymore. Admiral Sujin An stood on the bridge of her flagship, the HSS Valiant. She was 61 years old and had fought in every major human conflict for the past 30 years. She had seen victories and defeats, but she had never seen anything like what the Defiant had accomplished. One ship had fought for 43 hours against an entire fleet. One commander had disobeyed orders to save 2 million civilians. Admiral An had studied the battle recordings during her journey to Kepler 442. She had watched Commander Kim's tactics again and again. The woman was brilliant. She fought without following any traditional military doctrine. She adapted constantly. She exploited every enemy weakness. Admiral An knew immediately what she needed to do. All ships, this is Admiral An. We will use Commander Kim's tactics. Target enemy communication systems first. Stay mobile. Do not engage in direct confrontation. Make them chase us through the asteroid field. The 23 human warships spread out across the battlefield. They moved like a pack of wolves hunting much larger prey. The Valthari fleet still outnumbered them, but the humans had learned something important. Numbers did not matter if the enemy could not coordinate. Aboard the damaged Defiant, Jiwan watched the human fleet attack. Pride filled her chest. Her crew had held the line long enough. Now the real battle could begin. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from Admiral An, Hyun said. Put it through, Jiwan ordered. Commander Kim, Admiral An's voice came through clearly. You have done the impossible. Now help us finish what you started. Transmit all tactical data about Valthari weak points. Jiwan smiled. Yes, Admiral. Sending data now. Dr. Choi worked quickly at her station. She had compiled detailed information about Valthari ship designs, command protocols, and reaction patterns. She sent everything to the fleet's tactical network. Within minutes, every human ship knew exactly where to strike. High Marshal Theron watched the human reinforcements with growing anger. He had expected to crush one small ship. Instead, he faced an entire fleet using tactics he had never encountered before. "They do not fight with honor," his second-in-command said. "They hide like cowards. They strike from shadows." Theron's jaw tightened. "Honor does not matter if we lose. Commit all reserve forces. Destroy them." The Valthari fleet reorganized and attacked with renewed fury. Purple energy weapons lit up the darkness. Missiles filled space. The battle became more intense than anything the Kepler 442 system had ever witnessed. Human ships took heavy damage. The HSS Courage exploded when 3 Valthari cruisers caught it in open space. The HSS Determination lost its engines and drifted helplessly. But for every human ship that fell, 2 Valthari vessels were destroyed. On the colony below, Captain Daehyun Shin watched the battle from his command center. Most of the civilians had evacuated safely. Only a few thousand remained, mostly volunteers who had stayed to help with the defense. Shin had an idea. The mining colony had powerful laser arrays used for cutting through asteroids. Those lasers were designed for industrial work, not combat. But maybe they could still help. He gathered his remaining engineers. "Can we redirect the mining lasers to target the Valthari ships?" The chief engineer looked doubtful. "Captain, those lasers are not military weapons. They are not designed for long-range targeting. But they can still burn through metal, right?" Shin asked. The engineer slowly smiled. "Yes, Captain. They can definitely burn through metal." Within an hour, the colony's 6 massive mining lasers were retargeted. They pointed upward into space. When Valthari ships passed overhead, the lasers fired. Bright beams of concentrated energy struck enemy hulls. The Valthari had not expected ground-based attacks. Several ships suffered critical damage before they could react. Meanwhile, Dr. Choi made another important discovery. She had been monitoring Valthari communications throughout the battle. She noticed something strange. "Commander, the Valthari are receiving messages from other systems. Their empire is in trouble." Jiwon moved to Dr. Choi's station. "What kind of trouble?" "Rebellions," Dr. Choi said. "The Rylon people who warned us about the Valthari attack? They have started an uprising. And they are not alone. Multiple conquered species across Dominion space are rebelling at the same time." Hyun looked up from his weapons console. "They are inspired by us. By what we did here?" Dr. Choi nodded. "Exactly. News of the Defiant stand has spread throughout the galaxy. Conquered species are realizing that the Valthari are not invincible. If humans can fight back, so can they." Jiwon felt hope rising in her chest. This was bigger than one battle. This was the beginning of something that could change everything. "Broadcast what Dr. Choi found," Jiwon ordered. "I want every Valthari ship to know their empire is collapsing. I want them to understand that their time of conquest is over." The message went out on all frequencies. High Marshal Theron received it on his flagship. He read the reports of rebellions across Dominion space. For the first time in his long military career, he felt fear. This was not just a battle anymore. This was the beginning of the Dominion's end. Admiral An saw her opportunity. She contacted Commander Kim directly. "Commander, I have a plan, but it is risky." "I am listening, Admiral," Jiwon replied. "We pretend to retreat. We draw the Valthari deeper into the system, toward the inner planets. The star's radiation is stronger there. It will interfere with their sensors and shields. Meanwhile, Captain Shin's ground weapons and our defensive satellites can catch them in a crossfire." Jiwon studied the tactical map. It was dangerous. If the Valthari realized it was a trap, they could surround the human fleet. But if it worked, it could end the battle. "Let us do it," Jiwon said. The human fleet began pulling back. They made it look desperate, as if they were running away. Valthari ships pursued eagerly. Theron saw what he thought was victory within his grasp. "Do not let them escape," he ordered. "Press the attack!" The Valthari fleet followed the humans deeper into the system. They passed the inner planets. They moved closer to the star. Solar radiation grew stronger. Their shields began flickering, and then the trap closed. The human fleet turned and attacked. Captain Shin's mining lasers fired from the colony. Automated defense satellites activated throughout the inner system. The Valthari found themselves caught in devastating crossfire from every direction. Theron's flagship shook as weapons struck it from multiple angles. Alarm screamed. His crew shouted reports of system failures. He gripped his command chair and stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "How did this happen?" he whispered. "How did one species, One fleet, one stubborn commander defeat the Dominion. His communication officer shouted over the chaos, "Marshal, we are receiving an incoming transmission from the human commander." Theron straightened in his chair. "Put it through." Commander Kim's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. "High Marshal Theron, your fleet is defeated. Your empire is falling. You have one chance to save your people. Surrender now and we will discuss terms. Continue fighting and everyone on your flagship will die." Theron stared at her. He had conquered 18 worlds. He had never surrendered. The idea was unthinkable. But as he looked at his dying ship and his broken fleet, he realized something. Pride had brought him here. Pride had made him underestimate these humans. Pride would kill everyone under his command if he did not make the right choice. His hand moved toward the communication controls. The weight of history pressed down on him. Whatever he decided in the next few seconds would echo across the galaxy forever. The stars burned cold in the darkness of space. Commander Ji-won Kim stood on the bridge of her warship, the HSS Defiant, and watched the screens with tired eyes. She had been a soldier for 23 years. She had seen many battles, but nothing like what was coming now. The Valthari were coming. Everyone in the galaxy knew their name. Everyone feared them. For 100 years they had moved from star to star, conquering everything in their path. 43 worlds had fallen to their empire. Billions of people now lived as slaves under Valthari rule. Ji-won had studied the Valthari for years. She knew how they fought. They came with massive fleets. They had powerful weapons. They never accepted surrender until a world was completely broken. No species had ever stopped them for more than 6 months. Most fell in weeks. The bridge door opened. Lieutenant Hyun Park walked in carrying a data tablet. He was young, only 28, but he was the best weapons officer Ji-won had ever worked with. His hands never shook, even in the worst fights. "Commander, we received the message from the Rylon people." He handed her the tablet. They sent it 3 days ago before the Valthari destroyed their communication stations. Ji-won read the message slowly. The Rylon had been conquered 6 months ago. Now they were warning humans about what was coming. The Valthari fleet was moving toward the Kepler 442 system. That system had 3 human colonies. 2 million people lived there. They were miners, farmers, families. They had no weapons. They had no way to defend themselves. "How long do we have?" Ji-won asked. 10 days, maybe less, Hyun said. The Valthari move fast once they choose their target. Another person entered the bridge. Dr. Minji Choi was 54 years old, and she had spent 30 years studying alien species. She knew more about the Valthari than anyone else in the human military. Her gray hair was tied back and her face looked serious. "I have analyzed their fleet composition," Dr. Choi said. 47 ships, 3 battleships, 12 cruisers, 32 support vessels. They are led by High Marshal Theron. He has never lost a battle. Ji-won felt a cold weight in her stomach. Her ship, the Defiant, was alone. The nearest human fleet was 3 weeks away. Earth Command had already sent orders. "Stay where you are. Wait for reinforcements. Do not engage the enemy." But Ji-won knew mathematics. 3 weeks was too long. The colonies would fall in 10 days. 2 million people would die or become slaves. Women, children, old people. They would all suffer because she followed orders. She looked at the star map on the main screen. 1 ship against 47. It was impossible. Everyone on the bridge knew it. But what choice did they have? Yun broke the silence. "Commander, Earth Command was very clear. If we go alone. No help will come in time." "I know," Ji-won said quietly. Dr. Choi stepped forward. She pulled up another image on the screen. It showed the Kepler 442 system. There is an asteroid field in the outer system. Dense, difficult to navigate. If we use it correctly, we might survive long enough to evacuate some civilians. "Some?" Hyun asked. "How many is some?" Dr. Choi looked down. "Maybe 10%, maybe less. The rest will die when the Valthari begin their bombardment." The bridge fell silent. Ji-won could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines. She could hear people breathing. She thought about the families in those colonies. She thought about children playing in the streets, not knowing that death was coming for them. She had joined the military to protect people. She had taken an oath. She had promised to stand between innocent lives and danger. What good was that oath if she hid when people needed her most? "Set course for Kepler 442, Ji-won said. "Maximum speed." Hyun looked shocked. "Commander, that is a direct violation of orders. Earth Command will court-martial you, then they can court-martial me, Jiwan said. But I will not sit here while 2 million people die. I will not let the Valthari take another world without a fight. She turned to face her crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at her. She saw fear in their eyes. She also saw determination. I am not ordering anyone to follow me, Jiwan said. This mission will probably kill us all. If anyone wants to leave, now is the time. I will put you on a shuttle to the nearest station. No questions asked. No shame, nobody moved. Hyun straightened his uniform. Dr. Choi nodded. One by one, every crew member on the bridge showed their agreement. Hyun smiled slightly. Well, Commander, if we are going to die, we might as well die doing something that matters. The Defiant turned in space. Its engines flared bright blue. The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, racing toward a battle that nobody expected them to survive. 4 days later, they arrived at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The sensors immediately lit up with red warnings. The Valthari fleet was already there. 47 ships hung in space like hungry predators. On the screens, Jiwan could see fire falling from the sky onto the mining colony of New Busan. Captain Daehyun Shin managed that colony. He was a former soldier who had retired to civilian life. Now he was sending desperate messages asking for help that would never come in time. Hyun stared at the tactical display. His face had gone pale. Commander, he said quietly, do we really think one ship can stop an empire? Jiwan looked at the Valthari fleet. She looked at the fires burning on the colony below. She thought about all the battles she had studied in history. Small forces defeating large ones. Courage overcoming impossible odds. No, she said. One ship cannot stop an empire, but one ship can make them bleed. One ship can buy time. One ship can show them that humans do not surrender without a fight. She sat down in the captain's chair. Her hands gripped the armrests. All stations battle ready. Charge all weapons. Jiwan took a deep breath. Today we teach the Valthari a lesson they will never forget. The Defiant moved forward into the asteroid field. Behind them, the stars watched silently. Ahead of them, an empire waited. And somewhere between those 2 points, history was about to change forever. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was dark, except for emergency lighting. Smoke filled the air. Sparks fell from damaged systems. High Marshal Theron sat in his command chair, surrounded by destruction. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Carroll, stood beside him. The younger officer's face was covered in blood from a head wound, but his eyes were clear and focused. Marshal, we must surrender, Carroll said quietly. We have lost. Theron did not respond. He stared at the view screen showing Commander Kim's face. The human woman had defeated him. One ship had stopped his entire fleet. It was impossible. It was humiliating, but it was real. Across Valthari space, the Dominion was collapsing. Rebellions had erupted on 17 worlds. The Rylon species had seized 3 major military installations. The Karathi people had destroyed Valthari shipyards. The Dreshik had blockaded supply routes. 100 years of conquest was unraveling in days. And it all started here, at Kepler 442, because one human commander had refused to accept defeat. Marshal, Carroll said again, more urgently, please. Our people need us to make the right choice, not the proud choice. Theron finally looked at his second-in-command. What would you have me do? Bow to these primitives? Admit that everything we built was wrong? Carroll met his gaze steadily. I would have you save the lives of everyone on this ship. I would have you accept that we underestimated these humans. And yes, Marshal, I would have you admit that conquest through force was always going to fail eventually. Theron's jaw tightened. You speak of treason, I speak of survival, Carroll replied. The Dominion is finished whether we surrender or not. But if we surrender now with honor, perhaps we can build something better from the ruins. For a long moment, silence filled the bridge. The only sounds were alarms and the crackling of damaged systems. Every officer watched their commander, waiting to see what he would decide. Theron turned back to the view screen. Commander Kim, he said slowly, I am High Marshal Theron of the Valthari Dominion. I surrender my fleet to you. I ask only that you treat my soldiers with dignity. On the Defiance Bridge, Jiwan felt relief wash over her. The battle was over. They had won. 2 million civilians were safe. The Valthari advance had stopped. Your surrender is accepted, Marshal, Jiwan replied. Your soldiers will be treated fairly according to the laws of war. You have my word. Theron nodded. The communication ended. He slumped in his chair, suddenly looking much older than his years. Around him, his bridge crew began powering down weapons systems. The great Valthari fleet went dark. Throughout the Kepler 442 system, humans began the work of securing enemy ships and helping wounded soldiers from both sides. The battle had cost many lives. 17 human ships were destroyed or too damaged to repair. The Valthari losses were even worse, but the killing had stopped. That was what mattered. 3 days later, Ji-won stood in a military courtroom on Earth. She wore her dress uniform. Her hands were clasped behind her back. Across from her sat 5 admirals who would decide her fate. She had disobeyed direct orders. She had risked her ship and crew without authorization. According to military law, that was mutiny. The punishment could be prison or even execution. Commander Ji-won Kim, the senior admiral, began. You stand accused of willfully disobeying lawful orders during wartime. How do you plead? Guilty, Ji-won said clearly. I disobeyed orders because following them would have resulted in the deaths of 2 million civilians. I made the choice I believed was right. The admiral nodded slowly. And if you face the same situation again? I would make the same choice, Ji-won said without hesitation. Every time, the admirals conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, the senior admiral spoke again. Commander Kim, your actions were technically illegal. However, they saved millions of lives and stopped an empire that threatened all of humanity. This tribunal finds you guilty of disobeying orders, but acknowledges the exceptional circumstances. He paused, then smiled slightly. You are hereby sentenced to a formal reprimand in your service record. You are also awarded the Star of Valor, the highest decoration our military can bestow. Dismissed, Commander. Ji-won felt tears prick her eyes. She saluted and left the courtroom. Outside, her entire crew was waiting. When they saw her face, they knew. They cheered and embraced her. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Ambassador Narration was busy with the most important work of her life. She had spent years building secret connections with conquered species throughout Dominion space. Now those connections were paying off. She convened the first Galactic Council in a neutral space station. 31 species sent representatives. They came from worlds that had been free, worlds that were conquered, and even some Valthari who wanted change. Ambassador Yoon stood before the assembled delegates. For 100 years, the Valthari Dominion ruled through fear and force. They believed that strength was all that mattered. But humans taught the galaxy a different lesson. We showed that courage, unity, and determination can overcome any empire. She gestured to the diverse species in the room. Now we must decide what comes next. Do we repeat the mistakes of the Dominion? Do we seek revenge? Or do we build something better? I propose we create a true alliance, not an empire. An alliance where every species has an equal voice, where we defend each other against threats, where we cooperate instead of dominate. A Rylon delegate stood. Its translator device converted its speech to words humans could understand. The Rylon people support this proposal. We were slaves under the Valthari. We do not want to become oppressors ourselves. We want peace. We want freedom. One by one, other delegates voiced their agreement. Even the Valthari representative, a junior diplomat who had opposed Theron's aggressive policies, supported the idea. We Valthari have much to atone for, the diplomat said quietly. Perhaps this alliance can help us become better than we were. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Alliance was born. Back at Kepler 442, the Defiant floated in orbit. The ship was too damaged to repair. Instead, it would become a museum, a permanent reminder of what one crew accomplished when they refused to give up. Engineer Borum Lee walked through the empty corridors one last time. She touched the scorched walls where fires had burned. She examined the patched hull breaches. She stood in the engine room where she had worked miracles to keep the ship alive. Before she left, she recorded a message in the ship's computer. To whoever visits this ship in the future, remember that courage is not about being fearless. Courage is about doing what is right even when you are terrified. The crew of the Defiant were scared every moment of the battle. But we fought anyway. We fought for people we never met. We fought because someone had to stand up. Remember that. Always stand up. In a detention facility on Earth, High Marshal Theron sat in a small but comfortable room. He was a prisoner, but he was treated well. Humans did not torture or abuse their captives. That surprised him. One day, Commander Kim came to visit him. She sat across from him in the visiting room. They studied each other in silence for a moment. "Why did you come?" Theron asked. "To understand," Jiwon replied. "You conquered 18 worlds. You were the greatest military commander the Valthari had. Why did you do it?" Theron looked down at his hands. "I believed that strength was everything. I believed that the strong had the right to rule the weak. I was wrong." He looked up at her. "You fought for people who could not fight for themselves. You risked everything for strangers. I could never understand that kind of thinking. Perhaps that is why I lost." Jiwon stood to leave. Then she paused. "Marshal, the Galactic Alliance is being formed. Many species are joining, including the Valthari. Your knowledge and experience could help ensure it succeeds. Would you be willing to serve as an advisor?" Theron stared at her in shock. "You would trust me, after everything I did?" Jiwon smiled slightly. "I would give you a chance to build instead of destroy. What you do with that chance is up to you." She left him sitting there, considering possibilities he had never imagined. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442. The galaxy was changing in ways nobody had expected. The Valthari dominion was gone. In its place, something new was growing. Dr. Minji Choi traveled from world to world, helping species recover from years of Valthari rule. On a planet called Rylos Prime, she met with local leaders who had been imprisoned for resisting conquest. Now they were free and rebuilding their society. The Rylon people had suffered greatly. Their cities were damaged. Their population had been reduced by forced labor, but they had not lost hope. Dr. Choi watched as Rylon workers rebuilt schools and hospitals. She saw children playing in streets that had been silent under occupation. A Rylon elder approached her. Through a translator device, the elder spoke. "Dr. Choi, your people gave us hope when we had none. You showed us that empires can fall. You showed us that freedom is possible. We will never forget that gift." Dr. Choi felt humility wash over her. "We only did what was right. You did the hard part. You fought for your own freedom." The elder's eyes showed what might have been a smile. "Perhaps we both did what was necessary. Perhaps that is how freedom is won." Together. Meanwhile, Captain Daehyun Shin stood in the reconstructed central square of New Busan Colony. The mining town had been badly damaged during the Valthari attack, but volunteers from 17 different species had come to help rebuild. Shin watched a Karathi engineer working alongside a human construction worker. Nearby, a Dreshik family helped plant trees in what would become a new park. Former enemies were now friends, united by a common goal. A young girl ran up to Shin. She held a drawing in her hands. "Look, Captain. I drew the Defiant." Shin knelt down to look at the picture. The child had drawn the scarred warship with bright colors and a big heart on its hull. He smiled and ruffled her hair. "It is beautiful. Just like the real ship." The girl beamed with pride. "My teacher says the Defiant saved us. She says one day I can visit it in the museum." "You should," Shin said gently. "And when you do, remember what it represents. Not just one ship, not just one battle, but the idea that courage matters more than size. That doing what is right matters more than following orders." In Earth's capital city, Admiral Sujin An accepted her new position as commander of the Allied Defense Fleet. The fleet was something unprecedented in galactic history. Ships from 31 different species all working together under a unified command structure. It was not easy. Different species had different technologies, different tactics, different cultures, but they were learning to work together. They trained together. They shared knowledge. They built trust. Admiral An stood on the bridge of her new flagship, watching a mixed squadron conduct training exercises. Human ships flew in formation with Rylon cruisers. Karathi fighters practiced alongside Dreshik bombers. Even a few reformed Valthari vessels had joined the fleet. Her second-in-command, a Rylon officer named Kelris, approached. "Admiral, the training exercise is complete. All ships performed well. Cooperation is improving." Admiral An nodded with satisfaction. "Good. If another threat emerges, we will be ready. And this time, no single species will have to stand alone." Lieutenant Hyan Park, now promoted to commander, received his new assignment. He would command a ship called the HSS Defiant the Sioux. It was a newer, more advanced vessel, but it carried the name and legacy of the ship that had changed everything. Commander Park stood on his new bridge for the first time. His crew was young and eager. They looked at him with respect and expectation. He felt the weight of what that name meant. Listen carefully, he told his crew. This ship bears a legendary name. The original Defiant stood against impossible odds and won, not because it was the biggest or the strongest, but because its crew refused to give up, because they fought for something bigger than themselves. He paused, looking at each face. We will honor that legacy, not by seeking glory, but by serving with courage, integrity, and dedication. Are you ready for that responsibility? Every crew member stood straighter. Yes, Commander. They answered in unison. Commander Park smiled. Then let us begin. Engineer Boram Lee had retired from active service after the battle. She now taught at the academy, training the next generation of engineers. Her classes were always full. Students wanted to learn from the woman who had kept the Defiant alive through 43 hours of continuous combat. One day, a student asked her a question. Engineer Lee, how did you keep working when you knew the ship might explode at any moment? How did you stay calm? Boram thought about that carefully. I was not calm, she admitted. I was terrified every second. But fear does not have to stop you. Fear just means you understand the danger. Courage means you do your job anyway. She looked at the young faces watching her. Every one of you will face moments where you are scared, where the situation seems impossible. That is when you will discover who you really are. That is when your training, your values, and your dedication will be tested, and that is when you will understand what it means to serve. At the Galactic Alliance headquarters, Ambassador Nari Yoon prepared for the most important speech of her career. The Alliance was officially 1 month old. Representatives from all member species had gathered for the first annual assembly. Ambassador Yoon walked to the podium. The chamber fell silent. She looked out at the diverse faces before her. Species that had once been enemies now sat together in peace. She began speaking. 100 days ago, the galaxy was divided between conquerors and conquered. The Valthari Dominion ruled through fear. Rebellion seemed impossible. Hope seemed foolish. Her voice grew stronger. Then one ship refused to accept that reality. One commander chose to fight for strangers rather than obey orders. One crew proved that courage could overcome tyranny. And everything changed. She gestured to the assembled delegates. Now we sit here together, former slaves and former masters, former enemies becoming friends, building something that has never existed before, a true alliance based on equality, cooperation, and mutual respect. Ambassador Yoon's voice filled with emotion. This alliance is fragile. It requires constant work. It demands that we overcome prejudice, mistrust, and old hatreds. But if we succeed, we can create a galaxy where no species lives in fear, where diversity is celebrated, where strength comes from unity rather than domination. She paused, then spoke her final words. The Defiant showed us what is possible when we refuse to give up. Now it is our responsibility to build on that foundation, to ensure that their sacrifice meant something lasting, to prove that the age of empires is over and the age of cooperation has begun. The chamber erupted in applause. 31 species, each with their own language and customs, united in support of a common vision. Later that day, Commander Jiwon Kim visited the Defiant Museum ship for the first time since it had opened to the public. She walked through the corridors she knew so well. She saw the scorch marks preserved on the walls. She stood on the bridge where she had made the decision to disobey orders. Thousands of visitors came to the ship every day. People from dozens of species wanted to see where history had changed. Parents brought children to teach them about courage. Teachers brought students to discuss the meaning of duty. Jiwon stood quietly in the captain's chair one last time. She remembered the fear. She remembered the impossible odds. She remembered the moment she decided that 2 million lives were worth risking everything. A young boy approached her shyly. "Excuse me, are you Commander Kim?" Jiwon smiled. "I am." The boy's eyes went wide. "My teacher says you are a hero, that you saved millions of people." Jiwon knelt down to his level. "I am not a hero. I just did what needed to be done. The real heroes were the people who stood with me, the crew who risked everything, the civilians who refused to give up hope, the other species who joined the fight for freedom." She placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Anyone can be a hero. All you need is the courage to do what is right even when it is hard. Remember that." The boy nodded seriously, then ran off to tell his parents he had met the legendary commander. Jiwon stood and walked to the observation window. Outside she could see the stars. Those same stars that had watched her ship fight for survival. Those same stars that now looked down on a changed galaxy. The Valthari Dominion was gone. In its place, hope had taken root. Species were rebuilding. The alliance was growing stronger. Former enemies were learning to trust each other. It was not perfect. There were still problems. Still conflicts. Still prejudice to overcome. But it was progress. It was better than what came before. Jiwan thought about High Marshal Theron, now serving as an advisor to the Alliance. She thought about Dr. Choi, helping species heal from their trauma. She thought about Captain Shin, rebuilding his colony with help from across the galaxy. She thought about all the people working every day to make the new peace last. They had stopped an empire. But more importantly, they had started something new, something worth fighting for. As Jiwan left the museum ship, she looked back one last time at the scarred hull. The Defiant would stand here forever as a reminder that one ship could make a difference. That courage mattered, that doing what was right was always worth the cost. The stars burned cold in the darkness of space, but now they looked down on a galaxy where hope had defeated fear, where unity had conquered division,